thinking about awakening your inner goddess, the one who is just the most well-resourced version of you, who is able to, with such equanimity and such peace, and also such fierce fire, right? Able to really know exactly what she wants, exactly how she wants to serve and show up, what would feel the most delicious and the most impactful for her, and also really getting clear on what is meant to not be in her life anymore. Really extreme, was realizing that the relationship that I was in, which I had entered into, unaware of most of those things, unaware of most of what I wanted, of who I was, all of that kind of stuff. Realizing that that really wasn't going to continue to be true for me. And that's not true for everyone. That's not true for most of my clients, but for some of them it is. And for a lot of them, it's something else, but that mirrors that experience, whether it's a job that needs to change, a habit, a way of thinking, a situation, a living situation, or a city, but something that's holding us back and feeling unaligned. And I think that the only way to know for sure, is this something that I'm meant to work through, or is this something, that I'm meant to let go and let melt away in my life, is to get really good at listening to our inner voice. And so, does it feel hard? Does it feel sort of fuzzy right now to know whether or not something is really true for you? So I'd love for you to just take a minute and think about that. How clearly can you hear your inner voice? Okay, great. And no matter where we fall on that spectrum currently, my guess is that you'd like to be able to hear her even more clearly. So, one of the tools that I love to teach people and that I focus a lot on with my clients is thinking about our inner critic as really our inner child. So, I was just doing a session with a client earlier today where we were discussing a lot of fears that were coming up for her and a lot of thinking about like what is going to go wrong. And she was just really experiencing a lot of fear. And it was coming up in ways around her job that I think a lot of us can relate to, like fears about money, fears about being able to get what she wanted, and fears about being able to show up as who she really was. And I think that it's really easy to dismiss those voices sometimes as like, oh, this is my doubt. I just need to power through it. A lot of the feminist rhetoric right now is around like kind of just being the boss, bossing up, getting it together, and like almost imagining your inner critic as someone that you are fighting against. And we're just going to like block her out. And instead, what we did together was focused on the inner critic as like an inner child who's just needing to be reassured, and thinking about like what is the fear really revealing, what is like a core worry that's underneath this. And so often what it's really about for us is a worry that we are going to be kicked out of our group, right? Our community, kind of like what I experienced in church, that I'm going to do something unruly or wild. I'm going to break a rule and I'm going to be kicked out of this community. So often we think that if we don't perform the good girl and we don't rock the boat, or we worry that if we rock the boat, we're going to lose what we've so carefully crafted. And there's a part of us that's always trying to keep us safe from that because we evolved to be social creatures. We need community. We love each other. And it feels really scary because once upon a time, it was really scary. If you got kicked out of the group, you were screwed, and the evolution of human history, the community was everything. Whereas where we are now, it's not so scary. And, the good and bad news is that that part of us that's afraid of that, afraid of breaking with the group, afraid that we'll get kicked out. Yeah, sometimes you do get kicked out. I did, sometimes you do lose the social network that you would put together. And, the good news on the other side of that is that sometimes that can be exactly what we needed. So, in my case, I went from the silent Virgin Mary looking at this light bulb quietly to a woman who was able to use my voice. And to be totally honest, I feel more connected with Mary than ever before because she was, following the rules, but also breaking a lot of rules and showing up in her life as this, unwed teenage mother. What a scandal. And I felt like in the messiness, in the voicing of what was going on, in the willingness to follow your heart instead of following the rules and doing what was going to look good, she was actually more of a kindred spirit than I had even realized as a young person. And if that connects for you, I'm so glad. And if it doesn't, that's totally okay too. But it's all to say that your greatest fears and your reasons for staying quiet and reasons for keeping the lid so tightly on who you are not coming out of nowhere. You're not crazy. And there may be people in your life who aren't able at this moment to handle it, that that you're taking off and that your fire is really getting lit and that you are ascending. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're doing the wrong thing. In fact, it might mean that you're doing exactly what you need to do. And that part of your awakening is about shedding the layers of fear that say if you lose their approval, you'll lose everything. Because that's what I can guarantee you is not true.